Thank you. I have to say, I'm also excited to say good morning and see people in person again. And frankly, I know I'm super excited, I'm sure Molly is too, to be around other people that actually give a shit about it. Oh, sorry. As IBM, we've dealt with a lot of issues over the years. And part of what we want to share with you is some of our journey. We went through a fairly large transformation recently, and we're going to cover some of that. For a little background, my role as CTO is essentially I'm overseeing our general MarTech strategy. So anything that's related to marketing and heading over to sales is generally under my purview. And so we've been consolidating and coordinating to try to gain some efficiencies and get some better business results. And Molly?
Yes, and I am Molly Reinganum, the group product owner of our content platforms. And that is everything from the content creation system, to the content management system, to the DAM, to our media system, so on and so forth. So with Jess, we've been striving a lot, and you'll learn more about this, to consolidate and standardize and really transform the business processes around how we manage content.
So we kind of have three takeaways that we hope you guys get from this. One, obviously metadata is the center of everything. One of our biggest issues was that we had disparate systems, we didn't have consistent metadata, and we had to fix that if we were going to actually deliver some of the business results that we were being asked for. While DAM was a portion of this transformation, I think it was the key part, personally, it was such a huge project, we had to try to keep all of the teams focused on how to achieve the end strategy, define the goal, and then what are the baby steps to get there, right? I'm sure anyone that's in business, you're asked to deliver quick wins all the time. So how do you get there, still show results, but get to the end goal? And the last one, really for me, is yes, you can change technology, but unless you actually change the business, there's no point. You just swapped another Jenga block out, right? IBM has been notorious for getting new technologies, putting it in, and then we've overly customized it to the point where we can't update it. It's useless. We've just done the same thing to a different platform, regardless of whether it's business leader or not. Right, so we were trying to not do that this time. I will say, if anyone doesn't know what IBM is, we're a giant tech company. We've been around for 100 years, for better or worse. We started out in hardware, and over the last, I would say, probably 30 years, I guess, have migrated over into software and services. We've largely dumped some of the old products that we had, or sold them, as the case may be, and then kind of shifted our focus. Now, we still have over 10,000 products, which is kind of horrifying when you're trying to market all of that. So it's really important to us to make sure we know who our audiences are for all of that content, because there's a lot of things that go with selling 10,000 different products. And of course, as we've changed, so have consumers. Internet has happened, right? And especially, as things have accelerated over the last years, people want you to recognize who they are. What have they bought from you? What are the add-ons? What is the appropriate content for their role? Frankly, when we started this project, we could not tell you that. We had so many different systems and so many different silos. Everyone had their own budget, much to your point. They just bought their own thing and they set up something. And it meant that we could not have a holistic view of our customer and speak to them the right way. So we very much decided, essentially in 2019, to kick off this massive project where we go, okay, if we want a real 360 client view, what does it take to get there? What systems do we need to replace? What can we consolidate? What is the strategy? So with that, we also said, let's blow up just enough of the stack to actually force people to change. We've had, again, for better or worse, many employees at IBM have been there 30, 40 years, and they get very set in their ways. And as you're trying to do something different, you have to change how they think about it, how they do their work, especially if you're trying to get efficiency. You have to stop the box folders and stop the spreadsheets, stop emailing things, stop passing things around. So we really wanted to kind of blow up the Jenga stack, glue it back together in what we thought was the most efficient way to do some of this. And in my mind, the DAM was key to that. So we bought a suite of products, mostly Adobe, I will say, And then set up the dam as the center of all of that, right? Because we really wanted to make sure, and Molly will go into some of this in a second, that we had the right metadata, we could associate it with the right audiences, and we could actually check content performance. And then eventually get to the point where we're actually building recommendation models, so marketers and sellers go, oh, you're interested in this, you should be talking to them about this, and this is a perfect white paper to send to someone based on the role and where they are in the funnel. Right? So as I mentioned, we started this huge project specifically around how we talk to it. And so some of it was technology, some of it was efficiency, some of it was how do we even want to tell a story to people because we have so many products. Many of our clients have multiple products, and you have to kind of look at how the whole ecosystem fits together. Right? So as part of this, we bought an initial chunk of things. We've added on over time. We're now in, I guess, 2.5 years in. Most of the first year was just setting up things, honestly. And this year, we're very focused on the integrations with DAM at the core, specifically so that we can get some of those efficiencies. And if we store all of our content and manage all of our workflows out of the DAM, then we do have that central point. We can say, okay, we have an initial asset, here's all the variations of it across languages and channels, and then how is that thing performing by tactic and audience? We weren't able to do that before. So with that, if anyone's interested, you can see what we bought. To me, it matters less about the platform than what we're trying to do, right? And metadata is the core part of that. As much as I hate the word omnichannel, it is appropriate, right? And much as prior speaker mentioned, there's always a tension when you have multiple platforms, who owns what where. And I know we've been challenged ourselves internally with trying to reinforce that message that DAM is the key. You all need to integrate with the DAM. It is the source. If you do your own thing, we lose all the metrics. The metadata is not there. We can't manage it properly. We're at a point now where we're doing all of those integrations. I won't say we're perfectly omni-channel yet, but we're trying to do so. Right? The initial challenge that we had when we came in, there were over 30 DAMs in the system. Like when I say that there were a lot of business units and everyone did their own thing, not kidding. Right? Product data is in one, images are in another, videos in another, ad infinitum, right? So a good chunk of what Molly specifically was focused on initially was what are the target assets that we know that we need in the DAM immediately? And we've shut down a huge number of those systems to try to get a consolidated core, which we have to do to get to the omni-channel, right? So a lot of what we've been focused on is just laying the foundations. And I'm going to hand it over to Molly here in a second. But to me, even if you're doing that consolidation, you have to reset how people are thinking about it, right? You have to rethink, what metadata do you actually need? What are you trying to do with omnichannel, right? Because if you can't define that up front, then you immediately start to take on a bunch of tech debt and then try to fix it later. So we were trying to avoid that as much as possible. And with that, I will now hand it over to Molly to dive in a little bit more.
Thank you, Jess. So as Jess mentioned, 3 years ago, 3-ish years ago, we had 36 different digital asset management systems across all of our business units, all of our geos, certain creative teams. It's very disparate, lots of different governance models. And if you ask any single IBMer in those areas what an asset is, they would all have a different answer. So for us, as we kicked off this project, we also had a couple of areas where we needed to level set. One is, well, what is the definition of an asset? So we worked with a lot of different teams to redefine and be very specific around assets being specific components. So that was one foundational pillar we had to align on as a business before we even progressed with this migration and consolidation work. The other was around asset governance, right? So much of the DAM is ensuring that you have the up-to-date, relevant, legally approved, brand compliant, high-performing assets in the DAM. And if the DAM is the heart of everything, across our different MarTech ecosystem, then the dam needs to be a reliable source of all the content. So that was another major area we looked at. And then the last was around syndication. So going back to the former presentation around the dam being the heart, for us, I say the dam is the sun, and everything kind of circles around us. So our strategy is that, the dam is the single source of truth for all of our assets, and then we syndicate it to our email systems, to our content management systems, to our advertising systems, our social systems, so on and so forth. So throughout this journey of consolidation, we really focused on the asset definition, the governance, and then ensuring we have that centralized syndication strategy in place. Now, all of that is not possible without metadata. And this is my favorite part. I love metadata. And with, and with a company as big as IBM, where we have thousands of marketers, millions of web pages, hundreds of emails sent a day, I can go on and on and on and on. We need a way to easily identify an asset, easily know what it is, easily know how to use it, easily know where it goes, and easily tie it into our own IBM data standards. And the metadata is so important in this way because it also helps us support the 3 pillars I just went through, right? The metadata helps us define what the asset is. The metadata helps us when it comes to lifecycle management, digital rights management, so on and so forth. And the metadata helps us when it comes to identifying where it needs to be syndicated. So as we continue to build out those 3 pillars, we took a very, very data-centric view on everything. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of retreat attack moments, especially when working with the business. There are some folks that are like, I don't have time to tag something. I need to generate X number of assets a month. Why are you asking me to spend additional time of my day to tag stuff that I don't really care about? So what we tried to do is, 1, educate and inform the general community around the importance of data, but we also worked really hard to build the capturing of metadata into the content creation process, either manually or in an automated fashion, so that you don't have some poor Jane Doe uploading an asset into the dam and having to tag 70 different fields, right? That's just not scalable, and it's just not realistic either. So as we continue to build out our use cases around the assets, again, supporting those 3 pillars of definition, governance, and syndication, we also, in parallel, worked to incorporate the capturing of data into our, again, creation workflows. So on this slide here, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritties, but it's just a detail of what we do. So, from the point of ideation and submitting a brief for an image, in this case, that brief is already tied to our marketing business plan, right? And so through that, you inherit the data around the company. What product is it tied to? What campaign? What geo? What audience? What industry? What distribution channels does it need to go to? You then go to the creative element of it, and either, IBM is building the image itself, or we're leveraging a third-party agency. But even through that process, we're capturing so much more information from the agency, the cost, the licensing, all of the ITPC data, the file names, all the additional technical details. And then it goes through a series of reviews, right? It gets reviewed with the brand team. It gets reviewed with the content marketing team. It gets reviewed with accessibility and SEO and legal and everything under the sun. And through all of those approvals, and I know this sounds like a lot of overhead, but it's important. Through all of those approvals, we're capturing additional metadata along the way, so that by the time the asset is actually entering the dam, we have what the asset is, how we can use it, where we can use it, what is it tied to within the business, when it's expiring, so on and so forth. So that is a huge element of how we tackled the metadata issue, I would say. Because again, if we rewind a couple of minutes, when we were talking to the business 3 years ago, they were like, we just don't get it. We don't have the time to do it. we just need to, build stuff. And so now we've really built in the metadata capturing element into the creative process so that they don't have to worry about it. And then the last step is the DAM team itself has a dedicated content librarian team, very exciting, and they then go in and review and validate and make sure everything was captured correctly before it goes into the system. So that is, so foundational to what we're built off of. Now, once the metadata is in the DAM, right, it also contributes to how marketers can find an asset, how they can use it, where they can use it, when they can use it. And within the DAM itself, we've built in capabilities where any old Joe Schmo can go in, find an image, leverage, rendition generation processes to create different variations of images, and then based on the information in metadata, identify where it needs to get syndicated to. So the data is used both, in the content creation processes for capturing information, it's used at the point of storage, and then it's used at the point of actually influencing where and when and how the asset is being used. Now, this was a lot of work, but it's just the start, believe it or not. So we have, nixed those 36 asset management systems that we had 3 years ago. We finally have a standard model around what an asset is, what the governance model is, how it should be used, and built the data capturing processes into that. But that's just the start, because basically everything that we've laid out is for static experiences, right? But we live in a world with this new digital environment where there is the expectation that content is personalized. And so that is our next major hurdle. And to be honest, we are still working on that. It is a work in progress, very much so. But the element that we're really, really, really leaning into as we're building out this strategy is that we have to decouple content from presentation. And this has been, again, an attack retreat battle within our own organization, because we have some folks that say, well, a web page is a web page and all the content on it is a web page and that's how it is. And then you have some folks that say, well, this image can be reused on the web and can be reused in an email and can be reused in a social post, and like we should create the capabilities where, independent of where the experience is, that content is its own entity. So we're really leaning into that concept where we're decoupling content from presentation, and by doing so, that will allow us to further expand our foundations so that we can really hone in on the different variations of content that we have to maintain. And we're looking at language variations and audience variations and so on and so forth. So that is so fundamental to what we're doing. And in this example that you see on the slide here, just illustrative, doesn't exist, but we could use those different elements of content and their variations in the different experience touch points of a user's journey, and it can be further personalized as we continue to gain more information about the audience. Now, in order to really do this in a scalable, streamlined fashion, I'm not gonna say easy, but in a scalable, streamlined fashion, again, I'm going back to metadata, my favorite thing, that is just fundamental to everything, because if we're gonna decouple content from presentation, and then suddenly we're gonna be managing up to 100 variations of the same asset, we need to ensure that we have metadata at every variation for every language, for every audience, so on and so forth. So we're working to build out streamlined workflows that are further augmented to what we have today, where we can then build out this structured content metadata future that has all of this information. And to make things even more complicated, because IBM's a huge, huge company, it's going to have to be across 14 language variations and 20 locales, across endless audience variations, so on and so forth. So as we continue to build out this strategy of personalization, we need to ensure that the metadata continues to be part of our business processes, it continues to be standardized, captured, and as granular as possible in order for us to enable the actual personalization tactics that we want to do. Obviously, this is going to take a lot of time, and as I've said before, we have the new dam foundations, and we're just beginning this new journey, but every step counts. So I am so excited to be where we are. I think we've learned a lot with this consolidation project, but I know we're diving into the next chapter of personalization. So with that, I'm just going to wrap this up with going back to our 3 takeaways that Jess already discussed. One is, metadata is the center of everything, and it really, 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 really is the center of everything when it comes to defining scalable content solutions, especially for companies, well, really at any size, but at IBM's size, it's just not possible without the metadata. And so the challenge for us is understanding it's the center of everything, but also enabling and educating the broader community on the benefit of metadata and ensuring that we're able to capture it in as easy a fashion as possible within our own workflows. Second takeaway, basically, incremental steps are okay. We're all going into this world where we want to change everything all at once, and we have very ambitious goals. But you got to take baby steps to get there. You can't dive into the deep end necessarily. And each baby step you'll learn from, and you'll iterate, and you'll improve as things progress. And the last is technology transformation is also a business transformation. And this is something we also really want to lean in. This is something our own CMO has said is, yes, we're consolidating and moving over to a new MarTech stack, but this isn't a technology project. It's a business project. It's a change management project. It's a culture project. So as we're continuing to build this out, and as we're continuing to progress in our next journey of personalization, we're really trying to make it about the people and the business goals and empowering and enabling them in their jobs through our tools. And that concludes our presentation.